God, he was great. The people were standing and just screaming. A lot of people ask me, what was Frank really like? I feel so blessed just to know him and to work with him. It's just amazing. Worst movies ever made because it's just horrible. That pissed me off.
You worked on Apocalypse Now?
And he said, Don, you don't know anything about rock. Can't get you in the band. Then right after that, I kept getting jobs with rock bands. Francis, what happened to my music?
You crescendoed too early.
There was a bass leaning against the wall.
You got to play with Ringo Starr as well.
I did. How about that? Ringo, I played with him. And you know what? It was an eye-opener because Ringo doesn't play very well. You know, I mean, he's good, but he's not, you know. Is that possible for me to play on the piano?
Don, thanks very much for coming and being on the show. It's fantastic to have you, and you've had a look around the place, dopeYEAH, where we are now. It's a pretty amazing space.
It is.
Did you have a wander around? Did you see all the different...
Yeah, it's history personified. It's incredible.
It's like a cathedral to sound.
It is.
I would think.
It is.
And like you played. You've seen the garage part, haven't you? Down further.
Yes, I have.
And because you started out at one point, didn't you, playing in a garage? If I'm right, back in the day.
Amazing.
So you were born. I thought we'd try and get the conversation today going on chronologically, going through your life and kind of where it started and where we are now, and all as much as we can fit in the middle. It's a huge story, a huge tale. So probably need like 3 or 4 podcasts to cover everything. But we'll do our best and sort of try to let people understand who you are and your music and the people, the wonderful people you've worked with over your career, which is incredible. So you started out. You were born in Flint, Michigan, if I'm right.
Yes, I was.
And your dad was a musician.
Yep.
So what instruments did he play?
Well, it was kind of interesting because he started out, he had, when he was 18 or 17, he had a band, kind of a big band called Don Preston and the Rialto Boys. And I have a picture of that band. And they toured around the country and everything. And he started out playing alto sax and clarinet, and then he switched to trumpet, which is really, nobody does that, you know, because it's a completely different embouchure and completely different fingering and everything's different. But he did, and eventually he was offered the job of lead trumpet in Tommy Dorsey's band.
Oh, wow.
And he turned it down because I was 5 years old and ready to go to school, and he didn't want to be touring anymore. And he also had a job with NBC in Detroit, writing music for their various shows, radio shows. And we didn't have TV yet, you know, so he was writing music. They would have this, like, big, I mean, it was a huge production of a coffee show, like early morning, you know, and they would have guests and big singers and all kinds of stuff. So, but it was like it came out around 9:30 or something like that in the morning. And so he did that for quite a long time, like 25 years or something like that. Mostly what happened is that when TV came to the same station, it was NBC, then they didn't really in Detroit, they didn't really have their basic shows. All
Sure.
the shows originated from either Los Angeles or New York. And so he lost a job, you know,
Okay.
and he used to complain to me, they didn't even give me a pen, you know, so that was true. And he worked for them for over 20 years and didn't get a pen.
So basically, your first 4 years of your life, you traveled around with your dad, didn't you, while he was playing?
That's right. I was, my mom and me were traveling with the band. I slept in dresser drawers the first 5 years of my life. Well, I don't know about the last 5 years old, but at least, you know, early on. And because that's what they had, you know. And, buddy, you know, I can say that I was on the road from the time I was born until pretty much now.
Funny because I was reading a little bit about your dad as well, and he was like, obviously, I think you're kind of similar in the sense that, you know, he was a writer as well, and if I'm not mistaken, he wrote with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra as well.
He did. He wrote a number of pieces for them, and they would play something of his, you know, at least once a year or twice a year, and. Stravinsky had some really bad things to say about what he was doing, you know, like being the staff composer for the local city, you know.
But that's a pretty huge gig.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is about my dad is he could write all this stuff for a full orchestra, no problem. He wrote a number of pieces like that.
But he was also really into, which I find really interesting, is obviously he's from like a big band and then obviously into orchestration as well, but he was also into electronics.
Sort of. He used to write arrangements, and he would try to sell these arrangements, you know, all over the country. But in order to sell them, he had to play them.
Right.
So they were written for usually 3 woodwinds. I mean, not woodwinds, but like brass and saxophone and stuff like that. And so he could play, you know, all those instruments plus piano. And one of his best friends was a drummer, and he probably added some drums. And if I were around at the time, I would have played bass with him, but I was living in L.A.
Because your mum and dad, they split up, I think, when you were about 12, is that right?
Say that again? Oh, yeah.
Your parents, they went their separate ways, yeah.
And it was wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. It's like he just left, you know, and it was mostly because of my mom. She's not being too careful about her life.
Right.
But, he lived about a half a mile from my house.
So you saw him regularly?
I saw him all the time.
That was great.
And I worked with him a lot. He did a lot of filming. He had a couple of really professional cameras, and he had an Orcon and I can't remember the other one, but one camera was it actually recorded sound on a track, along with a picture. So back in those days, they didn't have, anything.
Sure.
It was really hard to do something like shoot a movie and that kind of thing.
So-
Although we did. Let's cooperate. Come with me. Shifting, drifting, cloudless, starless, velvet valleys, and a sapphire sea. And mind your mind, there is no time to lick your stamps and paste them in. Cooperate, and we will begin.
You started playing piano then at 5.
Yeah, just your standard knowledge of music and playing exercises, little songs.
And then the clarinet as well.
Not till later. I don't know when I started playing. Just, I played instruments that were laying around the house, kind of. And because, one thing is I knew the trumpet fingering, but I couldn't play the trumpet, because I was an amateur.
Right.
And when electronic stuff was happening, I bought an EVI, which is an electronic valve instrument, which had trumpet fingering. And a dear friend of mine, Niall Steiner, invented that. And so I bought one and used it quite extensively. Even in film scores, everything, it was quite a good instrument.
And Stravinsky's Rites of Spring, I think that's a big influence on you, isn't it, as far as cinematic music is concerned and how it influenced you just generally? Is that fair to say?
The thing is, my father had 78 recordings of that in our basement, and so I used to play that all the time. And then when Fantasia came out with Stravinsky, with Walt Disney, there it was, and they did a wonderful job of portraying the music with the beginning of the earth and how it formed and what it looked like, and all the way up till prehistoric creatures fighting amongst themselves and that whole thing, and using that music to depict all of that, and it was wonderful.
And what age were you when you first discovered that?
Well, I don't know, but I saw Fantasia probably 25 times back then, and a few times since then, because it's not just Stravinsky. It's Beethoven, Bach, you name it. There's all kinds of wonderful, and it's all pictured,
Yeah.
It was, Tchaikovsky.
So from that period when you were a kid, then you joined the army, obviously, when you got into your teens. What age were you when you joined the army?
I was, 17 probably, and I'm not going to explain why I joined the Army because it's too embarrassing, but
Nothing's embarrassing.
nevertheless, I did, and I was playing the piano in a PX over in Trieste, Italy. I got shipped over there.
You could have went to Korea.
I could have, right? Exactly. In fact, my closest friend did go to Korea and got shot. I think in his arm or leg, but you know,
Sure.
still he got shot. I didn't want to get shot.
Fair enough.
And I was sitting in an auditorium with 500 guys, and they were calling names off. George Peters, you're going to Korea. You know, Harold, you know, whatever, you're going to Trieste.
Sure.
And so just by luck, I wound up in Trieste. So I'm sitting in the PX playing the piano, because I love to play. And this guy walks over and he says, wow, he says, you play pretty good. He says, you should join, there's a band here, an Army band, and we could use you. He said, I could set up an audition. So I said, okay. And so he set up an audition, and a car came and got me and took me to the band, which was an abandoned whorehouse where they were stationed. And that worked out perfectly for the band, you know, because first of all, there was about 50 guys in that band, and the house had at least 25, 30 rooms in it for all the hookers. And there was a big, like, dance floor
Sure.
on the ground floor for people to meet and congregate, you know, and so that was just perfect. And perfect for us because it was a great place to set up the concert band. And so I played the audition, and the song they played was Slow Boat to China.
Difficult piece.
In G flat, which is a very difficult key on the piano. And I did my best. You know, I wasn't a great sight reader at that time, but I had a good ear. And I knew the song. So when we all finished, the warrant officer, who was the head of that whole band thing, he came over and he says, well, Don, I know you weren't reading the music, but you did such a good job of faking it. He says, I'm going to ask you to come in the band. And so I became a member of that band. Now, the band was a big band. Oh, no, first, there was a concert band.
Sure.
Played classical music, you know. And we used to go to a piazza, a square of some kind, and set up there and play music. And the Italian people just loved, you know, some of the stuff, the classical music. Then we would also had a big band, and we would go into an auditorium and for the GIs there, and we'd put on a show for them. And I did a lot of singing also in that. And I can remember one scene that I did do. It was, I sang Sonny Boy.
Okay.
And this great big guy, I mean, really heavy guy, would come over and sit on my knee. And I would sing, you know, climb upon my knee, Sonny Boy. And so that was one of the songs I did. We had all kinds of stuff like that.
And in that band you had, that was Herbie Mann as well, wasn't it? And Buzz Gardner, who was a big influence on you when you were younger, wasn't he?
Well,
like a mentor?
When I got in that band, I could play pretty well. I did not know what a bridge was in a song. And back then, everybody played standards, you know, and most of the standards had bridges. And I learned very quickly, you know, to play the bridge in the songs. Because when you're jamming, that was the other thing I didn't say yet, is that every evening guys would get together and just jam, play bass, drums, piano, and horns, and we'd play from 6 until 10 o'clock at night, every night for years. So I had such a great education, and the other thing that I was capable, I did, was I would write for the big band, and that gave me a lot of writing skills. It was almost like having a whole class, because I could go up to anybody and say, like, oh, the bassoon. I wrote for a bassoon. Hey, can you play this note to this note on the bassoon? No problem. Or he would say, no, it can't be done. And so I learned tremendous about
how to get the best out of every instrument.
Orchestration.
Yeah.
Plus, I have to realize that I never finished high school. And when I got out of the Army, I did a lot of research and studied orchestration by Walter Piston, and also Rimsky-Korsakov, and who was Stravinsky's teacher, and also what's his name, Respighi. Mm-hmm. I never knew Respighi or studied with Rimsky-Korsakov. I always said, oh man, Respighi has the greatest orchestration, and his combination of tones and everything, just, wonderful stuff. So that explains why to me, because Korsakov was a fantastic teacher. I think he also taught percussion. I'm not sure. I think he did.
So you went back to, when you left the Army, obviously you went back to Detroit.
Yes, I did.
And then you were playing with Tommy Flanagan. Is that in the right time?
Well, okay, so while I was in the Army, there were these basses lined up, I think we had three upright basses. And every once in a while I'd pick, one and try to play it. And
sure.
One day, actually one evening, I took the ingredients of an Italian inhaler, which was packed with codeine or something, I don't know, upper kind of stuff.
Sure.
I walked the 8 miles to get into town, because we were in this whorehouse, as I said, which was behind a fantastic castle out in the water of the Riviera, not the Riviera, the Adriatic.
Sure.
And I walked 8 miles, and I got into town, and I walked by this bar or club or whatever it was, and there was this band in there playing, Italian guys, and there was a bass leaning against the wall. So I walked in and I said, I don't know how I said it, but something to the effect of, can I play bass
sure.
with you guys? Possibile perform the basso? My Italian isn't too good anymore.
That's okay.
And they said, yeah, sure. So I got up and I started playing with them. I played with them like 5 hours.
Wow. And
then walked the 8 miles back to the barracks, or the house. And so that's when I started playing bass.
Right, you fell in love with the bass.
And I played, and so when I got to Detroit, back to Detroit, okay, in your story, I went to this after-hours club, and they allowed you to sit in. I went there, played. And that was kind of the purpose of that place. It was a restaurant in a black neighborhood. I walked up to the bass player and I said, can I sit in after they played a set or something? And he said, sure, by all means. And so I got on the bass and started playing. Now the drummer was Elvin Jones. the keyboard player, the piano player was Tommy Flanagan, and the horn player was Yusuf Lateef.
Wow.
It was basically his job. So I started playing with those guys, and I played the rest of the night.
Well,
then I went, and they were all just open Saturday and Sunday, I think, or Friday and Saturday. So the next night I went back. Can I sit in? Take it. Take over, Don. This guy, the bass player, he was Milt Jackson's brother, right. Ali Jackson. And so I teased him, and that went on for 2 years.
Wow.
Come in, take over, Don. He'd already been playing 5 hours. I was fresh. And but one thing I have to say is that even though Alvin was pretty young at that time, he would not allow me to play unless I was damn good, and I must have been damn good. So, and that, because I lasted, I don't know, the only reason I quit playing with those guys was because I moved to Los Angeles. And
you had to go back for your mom sort of needed you, didn't she?
Yeah. My mom called me and begged me to come to LA to help her with her marriage and stuff. She was having problems. And I did.
So were you disappointed to have to leave Detroit at that point because it was going so well with Tommy Flanagan and the guys?
Well, no. I mean, I had a bunch of other things going with the white guys.
Right.
Now the white guys, well, let's put it this way: the black guys thought I was really a great bass player, but I couldn't play piano. And one time I went in there and played piano with a bunch of these other white guys that I played with. Now you got to realize that this is in the 50s, right?
Sure.
And there was a thing going about white and black, but not very bad. Not very bad. I mean, with musicians. Like Pepper Adams was, and I played with Pepper a bunch of times. He never played with white guys. Just the way he played, it just demanded.
Swing the same way.
Yeah, it just, oh my God. He had so much power and so much big, well, I don't even know how to say it. He was so good. But you know, there wasn't a white and black thing. But the only thing is, the black guys didn't play with white guys very often, and the white guys didn't play with black guys. It's just the way it was. And so I went in there with this white group that I've been playing with and played piano. And it was like, it's funny. The white guys thought I played great piano, but I couldn't play bass, you know, and it'd be just the opposite with the black guys. So... And now I haven't played bass for so long that it's kind of, I mean, I could play it, but not like I could back then.
You got to tell me about the pet owl. The pet owl that you had back in the day?
Okay, that's a little bit further on down the line, but we can go there. At one point, after I moved to LA, well, first of all, for some reason, while I was living in Detroit, I went down to Florida with these guys. A Jewish fraternity wanted me to be their mascot. So I went down there, and they had a piano in their fraternity. And I stayed at their fraternity house for a while, and then finally moved out and got a place and, you know, stayed down there. I fell in love with this girl, and she, this is another weird thing. She had to go. Her home was in Washington, D.C. She had an identical twin. All right, so I didn't write her. You know, I wrote her like two times a week, and she got so pissed that I didn't write her every day that she broke off. So then I dated her sister, and their sister was cool. And we kissed, and that kiss was so scary. It was like, oh my God, I'm kissing this person that looked like the person I was in love with, but it wasn't her. It was almost
surreal.
I remember that's in a movie, but but yeah, it was really a shock.
Sure.
It was such a shock. Anyhow, so what was my point in saying Florida?
We're getting to the owl.
Okay, all right. I met Paul Bley there in a club, and the guy who was working there was Harry the hipster, and he let guys sit in. So, and for some reason, Paul was sitting in the audience, and I was sitting in the audience, and I went up and played the piano, and came back, and Paul says, "Come over here," you know. And so I went over there, and he says, "Oh, that was really, really, really good. That was fantastic." And then he went up and played. So what is he calling me fantastic for? He's really fantastic. And Paul was always such a great player. I always envied him, and I loved him. And we stayed friends for the rest of his life. He died a couple of years ago. And anyhow. So, but the point is that he and Carla Bley, you know, they were married, and they came to L.A. and rented a place there and everything. And of course, I would go hang out with them. I was married to a woman, and not my present wife, who's somewhere in there. And anyhow, we used to go, you know, go to the ocean, go to near this place, that place, and then one story I like to tell is that they'd come over to my house, and I had gotten an owl as a baby chick, and I had taught the owl. You know, the owl kept growing and growing, and I kind of taught it how to fly. I mean, it probably would have learned anyhow, but I would just throw him through the air, and he'd flap his wings, and then they hit the ground. But eventually, he just flapped his wings and took off into the sky. And he always came back to me. Never had a cage, never had any restrictions on him at all. And he lived in my family for a year. And all kinds of musicians just loved coming over to my house and playing for this owl. That would just love the music. Bob his head, and, you know, just okay, really incredible. And what would Paul and Carla would do, they'd come over, Paul would start playing a song. And he'd play, you know, a few choruses, and then Carla would slide over to the bench and continue playing without stopping the beat at all. And then I would slide over and play. And it was really, really enlightening, because when you're playing like by yourself, which I've been doing lately, it gives the other people, the person listening, it gives you an insight into that person's ability, the way they interpret, the way they see chord changes, the way they interpret the chord changes, and all of that. And Paul was such a I don't know how to explain that. You know, Paul could get out, and he did get out. He made an album with Steve Swallow and a clarinet player whose name I can't remember. And that stuff was wonderful. Oh my God, that's so good. I think they did 2 albums, but they tried. They did. they had a job somewhere, and they got like 4 people came to the concert, and they just decided, oh well, fuck this, we're not gonna you're not going to pursue this kind of music, which was, I mean, and Paul was so good at it, you know. I mean, it's kind of like, if you will, where I've taken my playing.
Sure.
At this point in my life, and even since then. I mean, I've always been on the verge of doing that, or even just doing it, that kind of playing. Oh, Jimmy Juffe was the clarinet player.
So Carla was a great friend of yours. Carla and
yeah, she was.
And Paul. Was it Paul?
Paul Bley.
Yeah, so they were great friends, and
yeah.
Carla was an amazing musician also. Obviously.
Oh, absolutely. And her name was Borg, by the way, your maiden name.
Sure.
Just like the tennis player. Her father, Carla's father, was a classical composer, and I never heard any of his music, but, you know, probably was pretty amazing. And Carla was amazing as a person. One of the things that has stuck in my mind was, while I was working on an escalator over the hill with her, it was almost like I wasn't part of that, but I was there. And because, first of all, my main purpose for being there was to sing on that album, along with Jack and
Jack Bruce played on that record.
Yeah. And so, but she also wanted me to play Mini Moog on that, and also a music box kind of thing, or, you know, what do you call those things? They're like little bells.
Celeste.
A Celeste?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what struck me was so much was that Carla, I mean, she was probably 21 or something, and drop dead gorgeous, and working with these hardcore jazz musicians in New York. I'll say hardcore New York, quote mark.
Sure.
Jazz musicians who, a lot of those guys are tough and hardened and, you know, what have you. And she's like, okay, you do this over here. I want you to drive and lay out for 8 bars. That was a mistake. And just telling everybody what to do and everything. And she had it so clear in her head about how she wanted the music and everything. And Michael Mantler was with her at that time, and he was helping her. But still, just to see her just
work the room,
take those guys apart and make them do what she wanted, and that was really wonderful.
Yeah, Jack Bruce always talked very highly of her. He told me once that she had an amazing ear.
Well, I'll give you an example of that. Michael called me to work on this album called Alien. And the thing, what Alien was an orchestral piece that Michael had written and performed possibly a year before we were going to record it. Now, he called me because he knew that I could reproduce an orchestra.
Sure.
And I'm probably one of the few people that did that. I mean, after working on Apocalypse Now, I knew a lot of ways of doing it, you know, especially with a modular synth, which I had, and, you know, various other ways.
You worked on Apocalypse Now?
Sorry?
Did you say you worked on Apocalypse Now?
Yes, I did.
Oh, one of my favorite films of all time. So what did you do on the movie?
Well, I was given a certain amount of cues.
Sure.
To
So all that electronic stuff is.
see the
you.
thing is, Coppola and his father wanted. His father produced the music. His father was the principal flutist for the New York Philharmonic for many years, and he knew what the hell was going on musically. I mean, that of course he wrote the music for The Godfather and all, you know.
Sure.
But Apocalypse Now was a little different because they fell in love with this, I think it's this Japanese guy who I can't remember, but who played the Moog, sat there, the big Mondeo Moog,
Sure.
and did all these things like, one thing that to me was very funny was, he did Petrushka, or no, Firebird. Is that possible for me to play on the piano?
Sure.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I just want to show you this. So he's playing this part. Okay, I can just barely get through it, but Tomita, that was the Japanese guy.
Right.
And Tomita, when he played it, it was kind of wah, 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 wah. You know, it was like so
Lightweight.
unpowerful. It was so weak. And, but anyhow, they loved Tomita. They loved Tomita. And so they wanted the score to be, because at the time I had 6 cases of modular synths, like that big. And so they called me on the phone, the producer of the music. He says, hi, Don. He says, we heard you have a modular synth. We'd like to rent it from you. I said, well, sure, that's okay, I think. I wasn't sure what it was, you know. And he says, wait a minute. He says, are you Don Preston? And I said, yes. Are you Don Preston, the guy that, went into Zappa? And I don't. Anyhow, yeah. I said, yes. And he says, well, why don't we just get you to play? Instead of renting yours, we'll get you to play and you bring your damn synthesizer with us.
Fantastic.
So I did that. Put the whole thing in the car and drove up to San Francisco, and got installed in the, and then just worked on the cues that I was supposed to work. I had a bunch of really good ones. Like, well, I did all the dossier cues, we called it, where he's on the boat and he's reading the dossier of Colonel Kurtz.
Colonel Kurtz, yeah.
Kurtz, yeah. And so that, all those, and then I had the cue where he gets taken off the boat, or he walks off the boat, and the natives all come and get him, and then he's sitting in a room, and Colonel Kurtz walks in and throws his head down at his feet. That was, I had to watch that 50 times.
He was tied to a tree at the time, wasn't he? And then
what?
I think he was tied to a tree, and then he drops the head in his lap, I think. Colonel Kurtz comes and puts the head.
I don't remember a tree. I remember him sitting in a room, and he was head like tied up or something.
Yeah, he was tied up against a tree outside, but I remember him because I'd seen it loads of times. That movie as well. I love that movie.
Okay, all right,
it's funny though. I can hear your music now. Now that you're telling me, I can actually hear you.
Uh-huh.
It's extraordinary because I know this movie so well, and I can hear all those electronic things that were coming in and out. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Because that's really powerful. That it really adds to them, like a genius on the producers to get you to do that. Because all of that imagery that you created in that movie is massive part of the, you know, the whole atmosphere of the movie.
I'll tell you one thing that happened there. If you know, to digress to that, there was this one scene where the guy, his name was Clean, and this is the first death in the film. And Coppola kept coming in the studio, and you would say, Don, this is the first death in the movie. I want this to be big, big. And so we got these 3 black women to come in the studio and sing, and I put a whole orchestra there, and it's like just the music just soars, and so then we came to a point where we viewed the movie with all the music cues in a theater.
Wow.
And we got to that scene. I kept just waiting for that scene, and the music wasn't there. There was some drums playing or something. It was just totally stupid to me. So after the film was over, I went over to Coppola and I said, Francis, what happened to my music? And he said, Don, the music was too big. It sounded like the end of the movie.
You crescendoed too early. That's fantastic.
So, I mean, that's probably the best cue in the film.
Honestly, Don, you know, it's been a while since I've seen the movie several times, but I'm not just being nice, that made a massive difference, because I love film music as well. I love Bernard Herrmann and, you know, those guys, and the difference he made to movies when he started doing it. But I don't want to sort of segue too much here, but you ended up doing quite a lot of film music, and I can kind of understand why.
I've done 24 films now. The last film I did was called Dances with Werewolves. And it's...
from the sublime to the ridiculous. You know?
Yeah, right.
That's okay.
Totally ridiculous.
But it's fun, you know, making music for film and television is fun, but they're a pain in the ass, those guys. I mean, I've done a bit of it myself and presently do as well, and I find dealing with producers and directors really frustrating. Did you have the same issues, like they want you to be like somebody else all the time, you know? I
was working with this guy, Michael Honig, who me and another guy would do, you know, he would get the job and it would be his name, but we did all the music for him. He had a big studio with all kinds of stuff. Oh my God, it was just everything you could think of. But the other guy was Brad Ellis, who is getting kind of famous now for being a composer. And so I really was getting to hate the business.
Right.
Because so many times you would write some really, what I thought would be incredible music, and you go there and the music is so low that it's not having any effect on the film. And when you listen to a great film and music, and that music isn't low, you know, it's not. It's never. I mean, do you ever hear a John Williams score that was low? No, not at all.
No, it's majestic.
So, and that pissed me off, you know, and I just didn't like the idea of that I had to fight that as well as, you know, a bunch of other things.
So can I ask you, the first time you met Frank Zappa, can you remember it?
Oh, sure. It's very obvious. I was we were playing, well, let's just say that there was this giant room and there were 4 bandstands, right? And there was a big place in the middle of the room, which was another bandstand. But when you're in the middle of the room, you're like you're you're like on an island or something, because of people all around you dancing all over the place. And so I was there doing what I do, and Frank was there doing what he does. And so we got to kind of know each other for just for a second. He gave me his card, I gave him my card, and then about 3 weeks later he called me and he said, "I'd really like it if you could come and do an audition with me." So it was at the Bank Club in Anaheim. And so we went to the Bank Club, and one of the songs we played was "Oh No." It's like this. Oh no, I don't believe it, that you make the world da 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 da. Do anything you really can be told. And so now here's the trick. Oh no, I don't believe it. No, that didn't work either. No, you know it is. I was wrong. It's like this. One. Oh no, you don't believe it. There, so it's 7 beats.
7/8.
7/8, and I said, "Frank, you don't want to play this because people don't dance to 7/8." And he said, "No, it's a beautiful song." And so of course, we played it, and we didn't get the job at all.
So the first time you auditioned, you didn't get the gig with Frank?
No, not at all.
Okay. And did you think that was that? It was never going to happen, or how did it revisit itself? How did you end up in the band? How did you end up, coming back to auditioning again and getting the job with Frank?
Oh no, that wasn't that was not the Mothers.
Oh, okay.
That was just Frank, me, and a drummer.
Oh, I see.
And then he used to come over to my house because I had this experimental group playing on leaf springs and drive shafts and all
Bicycles.
kinds of pieces of metal that resonated in the inside of a piano and a bicycle, of course. We all know that, we all don't know that I showed him how to play the bicycle. And he borrowed that from me.
You borrowed your bike.
Famous for doing it the rest of his life. Even in 200 Motels, he keeps talking about how he's stealing everybody's material.
Well, it's a great form of flattery, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you didn't get that audition. So how did you end up working with?
Well, he used to come to my house and sit in with the experimental stuff. And then one day he showed up at my house. You see, all this time he looked like a graduation picture in the back of one of the albums. Yeah. And so then one day he showed up and he looked like Frank Zappa. And first I was, who is this person? And then I recognized him, and he's like, "Well, come in," And he was fascinated with my wife, really fascinated. They would sit and talk for hours. And and a number of her concepts, take your clothes off when you dance. That's my wife, my ex-wife.
Right.
Totally, every word in that is right out of her mouth. So, and once again, borrowing some stuff with Perpivia that he was often known to do. So then later on, Frank asked me to audition with him. I did, and he said, "Don, you don't know anything about rock. Can't get you in the band." Then right after that, I kept getting jobs with rock bands, and they that just got me. And so one night I was playing in a band I had that played in everything but 4/4, 3 or 3/4, and We played in 1908, which if you want to know how that's broken down, did I explain that already?
No. Yeah, the 7/8 thing.
Okay, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3. So just like that, but
strange time signatures, basically.
yes, it is. But it works. So, so I'm played in all these rock bands for a year, and I saw Herb Cohen, who was Frank's manager at this time. I knew Herb because I were playing in a coffee house that Herb was running, and that was years before the Mothers. So now I knew Herb, and I said, Herb, tell Frank that I need to audition again. So he did, and I auditioned. He said, you're fine. You're fine. You're in the band, Don.
And was he difficult to work with? Was he challenging?
No. I mean, a lot of people ask me, what was Frank really like? And I have to say, what period of time are you talking about? Because he was a different person for each band.
Sure.
And so I was in 3 different bands of his. I was in, the first band with Roy Strata and Jimmy Carl Black. The second band with Flo and Eddie and Ainsley Dunbar, who I thought was the best drummer Frank ever had.
Yeah.
God, he was great. And then the third band, which was George Duke, and it's funny, he's the only one I can remember being Bruce Fowler, Tom Fowler played bass in that band, and Chester Thompson played drums. So, yeah, that was... So those, I kind of got lost after that. There were so many changes, and Bruce was in the band and wasn't in the band, and her and Ian fell in love, and used to hear the most ungodly sounds coming from their room. It was the classic Tarzan thing, boy.
So, when working in the band with Frank, he was obviously were you, obviously with the Mothers of Invention, you were all, there was a lot of improvisation going on. So you guys were very involved, much more than people, I think, well, maybe the fans would know, but you were very involved in the composition side, especially if you're doing so much improvisation.
Yeah.
Did you ever felt you didn't get enough credit for that side of it?
Well... Frank was always in it for the money, for one thing.
As the record goes.
Yeah, why not tell the truth?
Yeah.
And also, just along with that, for instance, like Louie, I played that on the pipe organ in Albert Hall.
Wow.
And we used to play Louie. But you can't find Louie on any album. You know why? Because he had to pay somebody else.
Right.
For the rights to use it. And not very much money either.
Sure.
He wouldn't. And of all the people that were in his band, as far as I know, I'm the only one whose music, he used 2 of my songs when we were performing and everything. And but would he put it on an album? No, because he'd have to pay me. And so he never did.
I read a story about you massively influenced the very famous film director at the Royal Albert Hall gig when you climbed up to the pipe organ. And you can tell the story better than I can, but... Well,
yeah, we got this letter from this guy. No, first of all, well, I'll just say who it is. I mean, not who it is, but we got this letter, and the letter said, Frank, I had just come over to England because something instinctively told me I had to come to England. I had some friends there, and I was in England, and I decided to go see the Mothers of Invention playing at Albert Hall. He said, when I saw Don Preston climb up the seats to go up, way up where the pipe organ was and play Louie Louie, he says, that's when I decided to stay in England and pursue my career. Now you have to tell what his name is, because
it was Terry Gilliam.
Terry Gilliam, yeah.
Who did Time Bandits, Brazil, and also Monty Python, of course.
Of course, yeah.
So that was a major influence on him.
Yeah.
And then obviously part of your career as well, when you started getting into some movies with Frank as well, when Frank started doing movies, I think it was 200, was it 200 Hotels? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, 200 Motels, and he did Uncle Meat, which I was the star of.
Wow.
I don't know why. I mean, I think Uncle Meat is one of the worst movies ever made, because it's just horrible. I mean, there's no point to it. There's no anything you can put your finger on. It just, and he would do weird things like, I'd be sitting there watching Frank, or no, I'd be sitting there at the control, I mean, this panel where you're editing film, right?
Sure.
And this girl walks over, Phyllis, and she said, boy, you really know how to turn those knobs and dials. Next scene is we're in the shower. And I'm totally naked. She wouldn't take her clothes off. I didn't care. And so, and I'm adjusting the temperature of the water coming out of the, and she said, boy, you really know how to turn those knobs and dials. And so that's about the most you could get out of that film.
Getting back to the 200 Motels as well, because you're in that, and then obviously Ringo was in that as well, wasn't
he? Yes.
Ringo Starr and some other stars. There was a lot of stars in that movie.
Well, Mark and Howard are there, and Pamela, and with the band.
So you got to play with Ringo as well, didn't you, at one point?
Sorry?
You got to play with Ringo Starr as well.
I did. How about that? Ringo, I played with him. And you know what? It was an eye-opener, because Ringo doesn't play very well. You know, I mean, he's good, but he's not, you know. I mean, he couldn't even hold a candle to the guy that owns this place.
But, well, there was always that rude remark from Paul when he said, someone asked him, was Ringo one of the best drummers in the world? And he said, he's not even one of the best drummers in the Beatles. But
no, but you know what?
That was a bit harsh myself. I like him as a drummer.
I have to say, in all honesty, that he had the best time of many drummers that I've played with. I mean, maybe not, there's no way of saying the best, because time is such an arbitrary, or just, you know, you don't know how to judge anyone by time.
Yeah, sure.
Except that you do know something that swings. The swing is such a hard thing to define, because it's, you know, it's the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. What can be different about it?
It's the feel, isn't it?
Well, some drummers are a tiny bit ahead of the beat. They're playing along, but they're a tiny bit ahead of the beat. And some drummers are behind the beat. Some drummers speed up, and some drummers slow down. The ones that slow down, I can't even stand that at all, because it's horrible.
Yeah, but a lot of bands, I remember Joe Strummer from The Clash, he said, you're only as good as your drummer. I think that's kind of true. And, you know, even the right drummer for the right band, and Ringo was for the Beatles, he was amazing. And also, I think there was another case where John and Yoko got up on stage with you guys as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he kind of he conducted the different parts of the band, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job of giving hand signals to the band and having them play a certain way, you know. And he conducted a piece out of hand signals, and it was quite good. I mean, it was very, very good. As good as, maybe better than Zappa, because it just showed me that, wow, this guy, John, he really is a composer, you know, he really is a brilliant musician.
Yeah.
Really, it was amazing to me.
And sort of all your time at Zappa, what would you say was the best show or the worst show with Zappa? There must have been some really good ones, and probably, because you guys are experimental, so you're always going out on a limb.
That's too hard. I'll tell you, I mean, because I was with it was
8 years,
for 9 years, or 8 years,
yeah.
You could say 8 years. And I can remember, well, you know, they just released a whiskey recording. Some of that is probably some of the best performances I can remember. And I'm on there, I can hear myself playing, you know, and it just rocks out. And it keeps going and going, and I remember, I'll tell you, that's what I remember the most, is that early band, and getting into a groove like that, and feeding him the changes and the way that, you know, and getting into that groove of I don't know how to describe it, but it's just really magical. That's what I remember, and that what I would consider the best of my playing with him.
And what's next, Don? What are you doing after this tour? You're doing a small tour at the moment, and then...
Well, my drummer for the last 30 years has been Chris Garcia, and we just did we're in the process of releasing 6 episodes of just improvising. He and I alone. And he's got, now, see, Chris, he graduated from college as his major was tabla.
Well,
and so he's playing tabla, but he's also playing, he doesn't have a kit. He sits on the floor. He's got a 36-inch gong over here, and all these kind of percussion things, everything. He plays it all, you know, and his time is impeccable, and it's just and his technique is marvelous, and I feel so blessed just to know him and to work with him. It's just amazing. So that's what I'm going to pursue.
fantastic.
And if this tour, it looks like right now it's going to be successful. The first place we played at Porgy and Bess in Vienna, we got, I had to play 3 encores. The people were standing and just screaming, you know, forever.
Rightly so.
And it was just mind-boggling. So,
Don, just for, you know, we're going to have to end soon because I know you've got to get ready for the show tonight, and I don't want to wear you out talking the head off you. I'm Irish, it's what we do. We like to talk.
I know that well. Believe me, I know that well.
You know, it comes with the territory, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Thank you, Don. Thanks, man. Thanks for everything. Brilliant interview.
My pleasure.
Don Preston.